You have the right to remain silent, sir. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to speak to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you. Do you understand these rights?
Yes.
As they've been read to you?
I do.
Can you give me your name, your age and your profession, please?
My name is Bill Leake. I am 54 years of age, and I am variously a cartoonist and an artist.
You admit to being a cartoonist?
I admit to being a cartoonist.
You admit to taking our national leaders and rubbishing them?
That I do admit to. I consider it a proud part of the tradition of Australian cartooning, one I'm happy to uphold.
Is it also true that you are a mercenary for Rupert Murdoch?
Yes, I am.
And you're of the left?
There is no explanation for that.
G'day, Bill.
G'day,
We're
Phil.
resuming this interrogation because, as you know, we had one just a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
But we didn't get very far with interrogating you, so I thought we'd get you back and do part two.
More confessions.
Well, Graham Richardson has dobbed you in.
Oh.
There's a great character reference. He says of you, every society needs people like Bill Leake, people on the edge, people who push. Sometimes they push too hard, and we've lost a lot of those people. We don't have any lefties anymore. There's none in the Labor Party. The Communist Party doesn't exist, but as long as you've got our Bill, we've got the last great lefty. There is at least one left, so it looks like you're nailed, doesn't it?
It does look like I'm nailed, but I have the feeling that I'm in good company.
Is it true, and I want honest answers on this, is it true that you won 8 Walkleys?
That is true.
19 Stanleys?
That is also true.
Are these the awards of the Australian Cartoonists Association?
They are.
Have you got 8 Gold Stanleys for Artist of the Year?
I do.
Are you also a 13-time finalist for the Archibald Prize?
Yes, in fact, I can confidently claim to have lost the Archibald Prize more consistently and possibly even more often than any other living Australian painter.
Well, you don't expect a lefty to going to win this.
I think it's highly political.
Yeah. Look, I want to start at an area of great sensitivity, which we did not discuss in the last chat. I want to talk about what was literally for you your near-death experience.
Uh-huh.
I know this is difficult for you, but I think it's terribly important that we understand what you went through and how calamitous it was.
It was more calamitous for those around me than it was for me. I remember nothing of the event. I walked backwards off a balcony with my hand outstretched to feed some birds, and that put me off balance. So when I was literally just walking backwards, and because I was stretched, my back was stretched backwards and my hand was in the air, when I hit the balcony railing, it simply didn't stop me. Over I went. But I have no recollection of it. The first memory that I have is of waking up nearly 5 days later out of a coma. And
waking up as in a Hollywood movie, or just gradually regaining a bit of consciousness?
It was more gradual, but not so unusual that I really thought that there was anything wrong. It was really quite peculiar. My son Johannes was there at the time, and he explained to me what had happened. He said, "Dad, you fell off a balcony and you've had 2 serious brain operations." And
what were they, Bill?
Well, apparently when you have that sort of a whack, blood gushes into your cranium, and I had a lot of blood that had to be wiped off the brain, which they did, and routinely they check a little bit later to make sure that that's been successful. And in my case, when they checked, the blood was rushing in there again, so they had to perform the same operation twice.
At the beginning, what was your prognosis? It was pretty gloomy, wasn't it?
They told my family, my sons and my mum and my sister were there, and they said that they really couldn't tell with any, they couldn't really make any definite statements about how I'd be when I came out of the coma. Because people react in different ways and it's quite unpredictable.
Bill, did they expect brain damage of some magnitude?
They did, and presumably I had it. But I think I was one of those fortunate people for whom another bit of brain damage didn't make all that much difference. And when I...
Why the cheeky grin on that?
Well, because, I don't know. I think
You mean you've been giving your brain a bit of a thumping?
I'd been giving my brain a bit of a hiding for the most of my life. And this is the funniest thing is that when I regained consciousness and Johannes told me what had happened to me, there I was in a hospital ward. I had pipes running in and out of me. I had a little contraption like an oil rig bolted to my cranium, draining the brain fluid.
One of these
off.
shunts,
Yeah,
so-called.
that's right.
Yeah.
Draining the brain fluid out of my head, and I couldn't move my head more than about an inch either way. And yet, when Johannes told me what had happened, I said, "Don't bullshit me, Johannes." And he said, "No, you've been in a coma for 4 days, Dad." And I said, "I know exactly what I've been doing for the last 4 days." And I started telling him about how I'd been leading my normal life, and I simply refused to believe it, and it took a long time for it to sink in.
You're saying that time had simply disappeared, not that you'd been going through some sort of dream state.
I think I had. I wish to this day that someone had asked me what cartoons I had drawn in those 4 days, because even now I feel confident that I would have been able to recall them in vivid detail.
Words are my form of communication, and when I dream, they're pretty wordy. I hope that your dreams are wonderfully swirly and Hieronymus Bosch-like.
Sometimes too much so. In fact, I had my first pleasant dream when I was about 28. And until I was
This
around...
was a wet dream at that advanced age, was it?
No, it wasn't. I just used to have I suffered from the most horrific nightmares and hallucinations.
All your life?
All of my early life, yeah. And I remember horrific nightmares that I experienced before I could talk. It's quite incredible. I mean, at the time, I was loath to tell people about it because I didn't want to end up in what was then called the nut house.
Well, a young child would find it very hard to verbalise images anyway.
I would have been able to describe the images, but it was the other strange things that used to happen. I would wake up, but what would actually happen was I would dream that I had woken from that dream, and I would dream about waking up in my own bed. But then these other really horrific experiences would commence. And then I'd dream that I'd woken up from that, and I'd think, oh, thank heavens, that was only a dream. And then I wanted to go again. So ultimately, when I actually woke up, half the time I didn't know if I was in the real world or not. It was very confusing.
Yeah, well, look, the dangers of pop psychology are awesome, but one might conjecture that with this sort of activity going on between your ears from an early age, that you were being propelled towards expression in images.
I think so. That's the sort of positive slant that I put onto it these days, because they were always, as you said, Hieronymus Bosch-like, but my dreams made Hieronymus Bosch look like the illustrations you used to see in Enid Blyton books.
You and I both quite like Hieronymus Bosch and Goya, the etchings. But
the man himself.
There's an argument that Bosch, in fact, was a satirist rather than taking it seriously, that he was painting those images of hell and demons and all those wonderful grotesques that George Lucas couldn't have imagined, that they were sort of mocking the notion of hell. Do you know anything about that?
I've read that, and it's tempting to believe it, because some of them are, seen through contemporary eyes, seem quite funny. I find some of them really quite amusing, and very ribald.
There's a lot of farting and stuff, isn't there?
Well, and bums sticking out the window, crapping and things like that. And I find them very ribald and really, really sort of entertaining in a way. But I don't think that we see them through the same eyes as his contemporaries. I remember going to Colmar in Alsace in France, where I saw the Isenheimer altar, which was Grunewald. And I tried to imagine what it would have been like for the people in the time that he was painting those pictures, to going into that church.
Well, they would never have seen images outside the church.
They didn't see advertising billboards.
No, there was none of that.
They didn't see TV.
There weren't books lying around the place. They would have seen their own reflection in pools.
And that would have been it.
And then they go into these buildings, and the buildings themselves would have been the largest buildings they'd ever entered.
And very daunting. And then to see those images, I think, would have filled them with horror and fear.
You get something of that if you go to Bali and you go into some of the village temples that aren't as overwhelmed by tourism as others. Mm. And the images, the Hindu images, are absolutely apocalyptic as well. And you can see that they're used to intimidate and terrify. You are in that business.
Well, that's right. And also, you hear often of the God-fearing man. They don't refer to them as God-loving men. You're a good God-fearing man. And I think there were a lot of them around when they were, in the time of people like Hieronymus Bosch.